The time is at hand.
From the land of crackheads and honey, on location in the south side of town, this is In Dark Places. This week on the show, don't really have anything going on, I'm just going to jump into it. We have some more glitch in the Matrix stories. How you like that? I like those. Those are funny. You know, weird kind of funny. Not funny, haha. I like glitch in the Matrix stories. And I got a lot of them this week. Like this one here. When my wife was in the early stages of her second pregnancy, I was doing some work around the apartment. I suddenly, and for no reason, felt extremely angry and aggressive against my wife. A few minutes later, my wife came to me and told me that she had to go to the hospital. The baby had aborted. Kind of weird wording with that. What about this one? I was sitting shotgun when my friend lost control of the car while street racing. We hit a chain link fence going 90 miles an hour. It was 3 a.m. We got out okay, although pretty banged up. He told me when the car stopped responding, he knew he was going to die and pretty much gave up and was ready for his impending death. Then he realized that I was sitting there next to him. He didn't want me to die, and suddenly he had the willpower to live. Later on that morning, I woke up to 5 or 6 missed calls from my mom. I was really worried because we usually talked once a week and it seemed like it was important. When I called her back, she said, "Are you okay? It's good to hear your voice. I had a dream that you died." Keep having the black cat moment. I get introduced to the same people in the same locations by the same people all the time. And I do mean same people, same location every time. Happened to me about 15 to 17 times in my 21 years. I stopped trying to point it out to people. I don't understand that. What is the black cat moment? I was staying at my friend's studio apartment, and the three of us were sleeping. My two friends are called Adam and Johnny. Known them all my life. Anyway, after a night of drinking, I wake up and see someone facing away from me, doing something at the sink. Now this person looks just like the back of Johnny, so I go, "Hey Johnny, could you just grab me a drink?" Johnny pops up to my right and says, "I'm over here." Oh well, it must be Adam then. "Adam, could you get me a drink?" And then Adam pops up to my right and says, "I'm over here." Now it takes a second for my mind to put two and two together. And I say, "Well, who is that guy?" And I point toward him. Then we all watch as this person slowly walked away from the sink to the corridor, which leads to the door. Now I can't actually see the door, but I swear I didn't hear it open or shut. Fell asleep again, presuming that it was all some sort of dream. When I wake up, I tell my friends about the dream, and they go, "White as a sheet." They remember me asking them to get me a drink and seeing someone at the sink. This isn't very creepy, but it happened just yesterday. I was walking through Superstore, LeBlau's. Was just leaving the casual side when a cart filled with groceries cut in front of me. I waited for whoever was pushing the cart to move, but after about 45 seconds they hadn't budged. I peered around the corner of the aisle to tell the shopper that they had cut me off, but there was nobody there. I pushed the cart away and everything went dead silent. I walked around the store a bit more, and to my horror, everybody was gone. There were unattended carts scattered around the store, and no lines at the checkout. No clerks either. It lasted about 5 minutes. It felt like a lot longer. And everything returned to normal. I was once driving home with my friend on a highway. Once. With incredibly low gas. Once. I'm just kidding. There's no once at the end there. Only two. When we realized that we were going the wrong way, and we were about 10 miles from the city we wanted to go to. I took an exit that went to at least a mile that looped around and seemed to turn us to the opposite direction. When we got turned around, we were just outside of the city we had to go to and had 30 more miles of fuel left in our tank. We went back the next day and did not find the next exit we took. The weirdest thing that has ever happened to me by far. I had a recurring dream as a child. I've probably had it in my lifetime at least 20 to 30 times between the ages of 5 to 13. I'm now 22. Between the ages of 5 and 13, I'm now 22. The dream would start with me being awakened from bed and standing up and seeing two identical black cats sitting at my desk. I get the feeling in the dream that one cat was evil and the other was good. Sometimes in my dream, I'd run outside or out of my room to try and get away, but they always reappeared in front of me. So I was stuck with picking one. I'd always pick the wrong one, and it would turn into some sort of creature and kill/eat/tickle me to death. I hated tickles in my dreams as a child. I never told anyone about this dream growing up, and one morning, my sister told me that she had a creepy dream with me in it. She said that she had a dream where she was outside in our front yard and there were these two black cats. She could tell one was evil and one was good. In her dream, I came flying out of the house, screaming and saying, "Don't pick them, they're both evil, and you'll never get the right one." She picked it up and the other cat ran away. When she told me this morning, my face turned white like I saw a ghost. So weird, and even weirder, that I was in her dream yelling at her to run. My sister lucked out big time. She somehow picked the right cat and didn't get killed by a demon cat. So when I was around 4 or 5, I lived in Northern Ireland because my dad was stationed there. I'm an army brat. And I vividly remember having a best friend called Lee. I would go to his house all the time, play with him and his brothers, and have dinner with his family. I even remember the day that I moved away. He came to my house with his parents and waved at me as we drove off. When I turned 16, we were going through old pictures for the most cliche tradition of a birthday photo card, and I asked my mom why I was never in any photos with Lee. She looked extremely confused and said that she didn't remember Lee. After an extensive Googling and asking the rest of my family, including my twin brother, it turns out he didn't exist. Neither did the area of the camp he lived in. Thanks, Google Maps. But that isn't the glitch part. Around a month ago, I got a friend request from someone called Lee Quigg. I instantly matched up the name with face to my imaginary friend, quote, and freaked out. I accepted it and clicked on the photo link of his profile. It led to a 404 page. I searched my friends list and recent activity, but Lee's name was nowhere to be seen. I'm being stalked by an imaginary Irish child. I drove past an entire flock of birds hovering, wings out, perfectly still. They were in a field, and I think were flying into a strong headwind. All of them gliding at the same time and not moving forward at all. So as I drove by, it was like driving through a 3D photograph. Weirdest thing I've ever witnessed. Edit. Just remembered another time that I had a dream that I was at a funeral for my best friend's grandma. Woke up in the morning and went to school. I was in high school at the time and found out that his grandma had died in the middle of the night from a heart attack. Edit part 2. Yet another time I woke up and saw a farmer-looking guy sitting at the foot of my bed. Then, when I shook myself fully awake, he was gone. Years later, my friend and I were talking about supernatural experiences, and he says that one night when he was sleeping on my couch, he was woken up by tapping on his shoulder. When he woke up, he saw a farmer looking back at him, and then he was gone. I had never told anybody about my experience before this. I was standing at the grave of H.P. Lovecraft shortly after his birthday, just last August. A friend and I had made the trip out to Rhode Island for Necronomicon and figured we'd pay our respects on the way out. Before leaving the site, one of Lovecraft's living relatives was there, and we stood and had a chat with him. Suddenly, it clicked. I had been doing this before. In my head, I proceeded to speak the man's own words ahead of him. It was freaky, but befitting of being so close to Lovecraft. Not my glitch, but my mother and father's. When they were both young, early 20s, recently married, they were hanging out in the basement of one of my cousin's old houses. My cousin was very nice, but she liked to dabble with the paranormal and just freaky stuff in general. Anyway, they are all sitting downstairs when my cousin informs them that she is going to get something to drink. My mother and father were sitting alone on the couch in this creepy basement when all of a sudden this old rotary phone next to them began to ring. A phone ringing, big deal, right? Except this thing wasn't plugged in. Not a single cord was connected to the phone. No power cord, no phone cord, nothing. My dad even picked it up to check. They both eyed each other and decided not to answer it. When my cousin came back down the stairs and they told her what had just happened, she became pale as a ghost and suggested that they leave the basement. They thought she had played a joke on them by somehow ringing it wirelessly. But this was the late 80s, and this phone was old. Couldn't find out. It had belonged to my great-great-great-grandmother, and she had it in the basement for decoration. Needless to say, my parents never went back down there. I always wondered what could have been on the other side of that call. At a friend's place back in 2008, when we were all teenagers, we had a cool shed at a friend's that we'd hang out in every weekend. It had 4 sets of bunk beds, tables, a fireplace, TV, fridge, etc. The whole lot. One night, we were all hanging out in there when I decided I needed to pee. I walked out the front door of the shed and started to walk to the right when I stopped. Now let me explain the layout here. As you walk out of the shed, his house is to the left, and to the right is where we all parked our cars. Further out, you're left with empty fields and trees. It was dark by now, the lights from the house illuminating the space between the house and our cars, but trailing off just past them. As I took a step to the right, intending to go behind the cars to relieve myself, I saw my friend's older brother standing there. I watched him for a good 5 to 10 seconds as he stood there, facing into the darkness. He then proceeded to walk behind a couple of trees and a car before he disappeared. Confused, I walked back into the shed and asked my friend what his brother was doing by the cars. The conversation went as follows. "Hey man, what's your brother doing by the cars?" And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "He just walked off behind the cars." And the brother said, "I'm right here." And looked over, and there was his brother, sitting down on one of the chairs with a drink. He was wearing the exact same clothes as I saw him in, and the only way to get into the shed was through the door that I was standing in the way of. To this day, I have no idea how it all happened. I'm guessing I was just seeing things, but the fact that I watched him walk around for a good 10 seconds has always puzzled me. I've never seen anything else like that happen. One fine summer Saturday, my parents had been outside doing yard work in the backyard. My dad was notorious for forgetting to lock the basement door. That's a walkout. Anywho, that night I had a dream where I floated out of my body, down the stairs, through the basement door, and down those steps. As my body floated around the corner, I saw a burly looking guy coming around at the same time, and he just got the shock of his life and turned and ran. Right then I snapped back into my body and heard a crash coming from the basement. My dog freaked out and started barking. I ran down the basement, having vividly remembered what had just happened, to find the basement door wide open, and items knocked over as if someone ran stumbling past them. Found marks on the fence that encloses the backyard the next morning to boot that looked like dirty handprints. I swear I saw a person that walked in front of me just vanish in thin air right when I was looking at him. He was walking in front of me for a while. I gazed away somewhere and he vanished as I looked back. Not like in a way that I didn't see him there anymore, but vanished right while I was looking at him. It was as if he walked in a soapy membrane in a 1/1000th of a second. There was nothing nearby that he could have jumped behind. No place to hide. A whole person. I stopped and I immediately tried to see if anyone else saw that or was nearby. I've never felt more alone at that instant, because I felt like I had walked through a portal or something, and I was afraid if I would not ever see another soul again, and that I'm stuck in an empty, rotting version of our world, timeless in space, till I grow slowly insane. In 2007, a few of us went investigating in Belanglo State Forest. I don't know where that is. It's a 4,000 acre forest in southwestern Australia. So that explains it. The site of 7 murders by serial killer Ivan Milat in the 90s. More undiscovered bodies are also believed to still be there. We were with a woman who was an alleged psychic, and she led us to a remote spot where she believed some of many murders occurred. It is approximately 2:30 a.m. We're in dense forest, kilometers away from the nearest highway, in the middle of absolute nowhere, when we hear a loud growl of some kind emerge from deep within the forest. Thing is, this growl is completely inhuman, but it's not an animal either. It is indescribable, particularly demonic. Then stuff really started getting weird. Suddenly, we see a red laser light surround us, circling the trees. Mind you, we are the only people in there. Well, we thought we were anyway. Suddenly, somebody in the group gets the feeling it might be coming from a rifle, that somebody else is in the forest with us, watching. The eeriest feeling then sinks in all of us, and after a momentary silence, we are all kind of suspended sheer, silent, terrorized thought. We suddenly crapped our pants, grabbed our stuff, and bailed. We ran for our cars, threw all of our stuff in, and got out of there. Once on the highway, our 2 cars are traveling relatively close together at approximately the same speed. The driver in my car, a huge, well-built man of 6'6", suddenly slams on the brakes before pulling over to vomit on the highway, simply out of sheer terror. After getting himself together, we start back on the road. Our other group of friends in the second car are now ahead of us a bit on the road. The driver of the second car is a really slow driver, so we end up overtaking them. My driver friend, 6'6" dude, starts speeding, and after a while, we are well and truly in front of them. It's about 3 a.m., and there are no other cars on the road. We have not passed any other cars, apart from our friends, who, from what we know, are all still traveling a fair few kilometers behind us. What happens next just really freaks us out. as if we weren't messed up enough already by this point. Suddenly, out of nowhere, we see another car in front of us. As we got closer, we see that it's our friends in the second car, whom we passed about 15 minutes ago. Thing is, there was only one highway. Nobody had deviated from off the road, and we had passed no other cars along the way. There is no way their car could have passed our car without the four of us seeing it. With about 8 witnesses to the story, it was definitely the strangest thing we've ever experienced. But what about that scream in the woods, though? Is that Bigfoot? Yowie? When I was younger, most likely 6 or 7 years old, I can distinctly remember playing with a few of the other children in my neighborhood, doing things like drawing with chalk and playing tag. Simple games that we played in our cul-de-sac. The little boy and girl I played with, I can still remember in detail. The boy's name was Randy, and the girl we called Lily. Randy was light-skinned, had dark hair, while Lily had bright red hair and darker skin. I was dark-skinned and dark-haired. Physical attributes aside, both of them were very boisterous, and we all loved to run around and play until the sun started setting, and my mom called me in, and the both of them would run back to their houses until the next time we were out to play. It was a sweet little friendship, and it was pretty normal, except for a few things. When we would draw with chalk, both Randy and Lily's favorite things to draw were these little symbols with random words after them. I now realize those symbols were very close to some symbols I had seen, but for the life of me, I could not remember where, and I could not remember some of the words they wrote, having to do with the terms that I still do not recognize. My mom would come out with juice boxes sometimes when we were drawing and laugh at our friends' cute, made-up language. One morning, I went out to play with my friends, only to find them sitting on the curb, sulking. When I asked them why they were sad, they simply told me that they had to leave because, and I quote, "We got to get back to 2137. I asked them where that was, and they said it was later. I told them to sit right there and wait a minute so they could bring me something to remember them by. I did what they told me, and soon enough, they had returned, bearing what I have chalked up to the strangest gifts I've been given to date. They were a little rainbow hairbrush that sparkled, a small unmarked tube of what I was informed was lotion, and a small box that looked as though it was carved out of a gem. They handed me the gifts, which I promptly tried out, brushing my hair and using some of the lotion on my wrist. And I knew I wasn't going to just throw them aside, and they hugged me before running back to their respective houses. My memory cuts off at this point, but the next thing I remember was waking up, sleeping, rubbing my pale-skinned hands across my face and brush away my bright red hair, and going to ask my mom if Randy and Lily had left. My mom had no idea who I was talking about. Our neighbors had no children. She did not remember me being born with dark skin and dark hair. No one did. That was the day that Randy and Lily disappeared from the face of the earth, leaving me with an unfamiliar new appearance, a tube of hand lotion, a tiny comb, and a glittery little box that sits on my mantle till this day, which I still have no idea how to open. When I was in high school, I had a habit of taking power naps while everyone was having lunch. I'd curl up in a quiet part of the hallway, pull my jacket over my face, and sleep for maybe 15 minutes. This one time, I was startled out of sleep by a passing crowd of my fellow students. Everyone was in a rush to make it in time before our strict teacher would start taking note of absences. I ran after the crowd, walked up the stairs to the right classroom, and sat at the only desk that was left for me. The teacher told us to open our books. the world froze, and suddenly the situation sort of reset. I was back at the hallway, blinking sleep out of my eyes because I'd been awoken by passing students. I thought it was just a funny coincidence, some sort of brain fart. I went up the stairs after the others and sat at the same empty desk. The teacher told us to open our books, and again, reset. The same 2 or so minutes, wake up to noise, go upstairs after others, sit at the same desk. Teacher tells the class to open our books, replay it again. For the first few loops, while it was still more interesting than terrifying, I had so many questions. Was I having an intense nightmare? Going insane? I was and am an atheist with zero belief in anything paranormal, so no options other than this isn't real didn't cross my mind. Some loops later, I started doing all those things I'd read about online to see if I was in a dream. Reading signs, trying to put my hand through a wall while looking away, that kind of stuff. Everything seemed as real as reality to me. My theories and contemplations got more outlandish. If there was some sort of complex temporal situation going on and the loop would continue indefinitely, would I eventually die of hunger? At the same time, I tried to mess around with the loop to see if anything would happen. Deviating from the route did not do anything. I tried staying in the hallway or going outside, but after the 2 or so minutes, I was always back in the hallway regardless of my actions. I tried to engage other students and teachers, but everyone seemed preoccupied with their own tasks. If I managed to get someone to talk to me, they were always irritated with whatever I did that deviated from the loop. You shouldn't skip class, or the teacher's going to be mad if you're late. The same default responses, same tones over and over. I eventually tried injuring myself with scissors. An incredibly ill-advised move, I know, but at this stage I was basically out of my mind with fear. Luckily, it only resulted in the loop resetting faster. I honestly don't know how many repeats of the loop I experienced, because I soon stopped counting. As I was getting more and more scared, I stopped wondering about the inexplicable hows and whys. As far as I could tell, the situation could not be explained, at least by me, and I was the only variable in the loop, and so I became obsessed with the idea that perhaps a certain behavior was required or expected of me. I'd seen the time loop trope in fiction before, but in those scenarios, there was usually some sort of event that had to be either prevented or instigated. In my case, there was nothing. My self-imposed goal became to stop acting like I was aware of the loop. So I tried to replicate my behavior from the first loop down to the finest detail to my best recollection. It changed nothing, but I latched onto the idea of perfecting this routine because I had nothing else. Loop after loop after loop, the same thing. They all blur together in my memory. When you're scared of a fate potentially worse than death, it's incredibly easy to stop asking questions and just function on autopilot. The thing is, I'd have written the whole thing off as a dream, if not for the very last loop. By then, I completely accepted my fate, living in some sort of limbo when the loop no longer reset. My teacher told the class to open our books, and where I usually would have woken up in the hallway again, the world hung, I guess. I don't know how else to describe it. Time seemed to pause for less than a second, just like you might experience in a game when you quick save. And then the teacher went on with the lesson of the day, and life went on. I don't know what to do with this experience, other than share it with the internet in hopes that someone is amused for a couple of minutes. Let's not do the time warp again. Okay. I don't know if that's true or not, but it's pretty neat. And with that, I think I want to stop right there. That's a pretty decent little amount of stories. So, yeah, I want to stop right there. Thanks for listening to the big show. Really appreciate you. If you've got a true scary story and you'd like to be a guest on the show, send an email to indarkplacespod@hotmail.com. I want to try to get back to having guests on the show. I think that might help with the temporal time loop reset thing, the Mercury retrograde, and stuff like that. But anyway, see you again next time. God bless.